Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night, like a rich jewel in an Aesop's ear. Beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady o'er her fellow show. The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and, touching hers, make blessed my rude hand. Did my heart love till now? Forswear its sight, for I never saw true beauty till this night. Hi friends. Okay, let's talk Romeo and Juliet. This is a play that I absolutely love, and I kind of feel like it gets a bad rap because it's taught, at least in the US, in high school, when the majority of kids don't really want to take the time to learn the difficult language and to really understand the nuances and the varying plots and subplots that are really evident in this play the deeper you dive into it. These themes are really what drives Romeo and Juliet to ultimately do what they did, and I think the older you get, or the more that you look into it, you see that the overall outcome of what Romeo and Juliet ultimately did for their love is just the effects of so many other poor decisions by their family members and their friends. And yeah, it's just, you just have to read it and reread it and see it to really get it. I get why it's taught in high school. I do. It's about teenagers. It's about falling in love too quickly and letting it rule you, and what, hopefully is not what, teenagers would do today for their love, but it shows, like what can happen if you let your emotions rule you. So I get that. I get why it's taught in high school, but there's just so much more to it. But first, let's just talk a little history on Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet was written early on in Shakespeare's career, kind of around the same time as A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is also one of my favorite plays by him. So apparently this whole era of Shakespeare's writing is my jam. It was written in the 1590s. I looked up various reports that said anywhere from like 1594 to 1597. So I don't know if they really know exactly when it was written. But it was written in a time when England was really, really into the Italian Renaissance period, which is obviously a period where love and beauty and drama was very celebrated in Italy, and that translated into this time period in England. It's considered one of Shakespeare's tragedies, not a romance, for obvious reasons that everyone dies and there's no frolicking at a wedding at the end. So, not everyone dies. I mean, if you're watching this video, you've read it, so not everyone dies, but Romeo and Juliet, obviously. There's no, fun wedding. This is the part that I thought was the most interesting of the little history that I was looking up for this. It was first performed when all the playhouses reopened after everything had been shut down for an outbreak of the plague. And I thought, that's interesting given the times. All of our theaters are still shut down in my town. I just got word that there is an audition at my local theater company, and I won't be auditioning for this one, but but not because, you know, I don't want to, but it's not a play that would be suited for me. But I'm really excited about it, and it's supposed to run in November, so I'm really excited about that. But anyway, I was telling my friend Sarah about this, Sarah from Steeped in Books, and I said, so Romeo and Juliet was apparently first performed right after the plague happened in England, or at least in London. And she says, oh, that's a jolly way to celebrate getting over the plague, a play where everyone dies. I'm paraphrasing. She didn't necessarily say it that way, but yeah, she does have a point. I probably would have preferred to see something happy, but you know, what are you going to do? So, but this is also interesting in that Shakespeare references the plague in a very small but integral scene between Friar Lawrence and Friar John, who actually I played in a recent production of Romeo and Juliet, so I'll pop some pictures of our little scene in here. But Friar John is tasked with bringing the note to Romeo in Mantua, where he has been banished, that Juliet and Friar Lawrence are planning this fake death, and all the things about her going to be hidden in the tomb, but she'll wake up, and, you know, don't worry about it. But he gets quarantined while he is trying to get to Romeo, and he's quarantined in a house, and he cannot get away no matter what he tries to do. The authorities won't let him leave, so he is unable to get the note to Romeo, hence all the craziness that happens in the latter half of the play. So that was actually, for me, a really fun part to play. They kind of made me like a hippie. And I was supposed to be kind of flighty and almost like I didn't really get the importance of the letter, and I was kind of surprised when Friar Lawrence went off on me about why I didn't get this note to Romeo. So yeah, it was really a fun part to play, even though it was really like a small scene. It's really like one of the pivotal scenes in the play. So yeah, it was really interesting to play that part. Sonnets are a big part of this play, of course, and as you know, as we all know, Shakespeare wrote a lot of sonnets, and that is because during this time frame, like I said, everybody was really into the whole Italian Renaissance movement. It's not really a movement. I don't know what to call it, but everybody was really into that, and especially in the prologue and Romeo and Juliet's first interaction together. Those parts of Romeo and Juliet are done in sonnet form, and that is because sonnets were often about love at first sight and the conflict that can arise from love and marriage and courtship and love at first sight. So Shakespeare's audience would have seen that coming, you know, from the prologue, and and just the whole love at first sight scene where they first talk to each other would just really lend itself to the sonnet style, and to me that is one of the most beautiful scenes in the whole play. So, and I'm not even a poetry person, but I think I like sonnets. Oh, and I found this really interesting, and I kind of knew this already, but I didn't know as much about it. Romeo and Juliet is actually an adaptation of an earlier Romeo and Juliet by an Italian author. It was more of an epic poem, and Shakespeare obviously had to adapt it for a stage setting. And it was interesting because in the Italian version, which I haven't read, I just was researching this, um, the whole thing takes place over a period of months, not days. And some of the smaller characters, we don't really consider them small in the form that we read, but like Mercutio and Benvolio, those kind of characters that have a bigger role in the Romeo and Juliet that we know were really pretty small in the Italian version from about 40 years earlier. So Shakespeare expanded those characters, cut down the time frame to just make the whole tension and pressure of we got to do this, we have to do this. I guess in the Italian version, Romeo wasn't banished till like 3 months after their marriage, which I find really interesting, because in this version, he pretty much already knows he's going to be banished when they have their wedding night. So, and that is kind of why they get married so quickly, is because he's going to be banished and she doesn't want to be without him. And yeah, so she doesn't want to marry Paris, so she's like, you're going to marry me, basically, so that I can get out of this. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting and really clever on Shakespeare's part, because I just don't think there would have been that pressure if it was like, oh yeah, we got married and we had like 3 months together and then I killed Tybalt and then I got banished. It's not really the same, and also in the Italian version, apparently Mercutio, I don't even know if he was really involved in the whole scene where Romeo and Tybalt and Mercutio all duel. I'm not sure, but in the Italian version, apparently Romeo killed Tybalt in self-defense, not avenging Mercutio's death, which, I mean, both would have been cool, but I really, really like the character of Mercutio, and I'm so glad that Shakespeare expanded his character because he is just awesome. And I'm going to put in a picture here of my friend who played Mercutio in the one that we were in, because he was just stellar. He's just a fantastic person and and a fantastic actor, and I give him all the props in the world because he was wearing so much clothing, and it had to be 100 degrees in that park. It was awful. We were like dripping in sweat, and they had so many clothes on. There was one scene where I had to wear a lot of clothes, and by like the second week of performance, I'm like, no, we're stripping off some layers here. I can't do this anymore. I'm not built for this. So, but yeah, I really love Mercutio's character, so I'm really glad. I'm really, really glad that Shakespeare expanded some of these characters. So that's enough history. Since we're already talking about why I love Romeo and Juliet so much, let's just head right into that. First of all, I just love the language in this. I already did a little voiceover while I was coloring in my coloring book. Some of the quotes, the quote that was in the coloring book, I read out to you. And like I said, I just love the whole speech that, or the whole scene with Romeo and Juliet first meeting, and just the symbolism in that, and we all know so many of the quotes from that, and it's just such a readable play, I think. I mean, if you're gonna read a Shakespeare play, and this is probably too why it is taught so much in high schools, I just feel like it's so readable. Like, the language is not so crazy that you can't pull nuggets out from it, and that you can't understand what's happening. Like, you totally can, at least I think. Yeah, I just really think that the language is fascinating in this one, and it's one of the most beautiful of all of Shakespeare that I have read anyway. I'm not going to say that I'm the most well-read Shakespeare reader, but of the ones I have read, this one it's up there in the most beautiful. Also, I kind of touched on this in my history lesson portion, that I just really love how the story expands as the reader or the viewer matures. Like when I would have read this in high school, I would have just focused on the Romeo and Juliet part of the story. That would have been the most obvious one, and it would have just been uh, the most like relatable at the time for me, I guess, because I was probably an over emotional teen. I feel like I was not maybe as emotional as some, but I'm sure I was. And but like in my performance of the play, I got so much more out of the parental side of Romeo and Juliet. How awful, what an awful, awful man Capulet was. And even his wife, like his wife does nothing to help Juliet. And she confides in her mother that she does not want to marry Paris. And I get that in that time of the world, women were just, married off to whoever was the most suitable for the family, not necessarily for them. But, it was just like heartbreaking that Juliet was, pouring her heart out to her parents in the one scene, and they were both just awful to her. Capulet most especially. He was downright abusive to her and calling her names and saying he'd rather see her die than, married to someone he didn't approve of, or, something like that. And Lady Capulet, she was a very vengeful person. I think we kind of get this, like, she might have been an abused wife person, or kind of character, which she probably was. I mean, Capulet was horrible. But she was also very vengeful. She wanted Romeo's blood for the death of Tybalt. And she hated them. She hated the Montagues as much as her husband did. And and then the Montagues were kind of not really even there. They were kind of absent parents. They were there, and they kind of cared about, like, I feel like Lady Montague, who was another character that I played in that play because I just had various smaller roles. So I played Lady Montague, and she really was not in it that much at all. And yes, we did cut some things out, and she was cut out a lot of it. But I feel like she was definitely more docile. She just wanted her son to be okay. But neither one of them really tried to help him. There are no real heart-to-hearts with Romeo. They're concerned about him, but then it's like, nah. you're a guy, do what you got to do, kind of thing. She ends up dying of grief whenever she finds out that Romeo killed Tybalt and that he was banished. She dies of grief, but so she was definitely like more of an emotional soul, but we didn't get to see a lot of that. And maybe it was more just because women just didn't have much power over their husbands, if at all, at that point. And I feel like Montague was there more just to yell at Capulet and to show the feud. But I thought that another interesting point is we never know what the feud was about. We don't know why they hated each other. It was just a very old family feud that they hated each other, and that's all we get. So it just shows how dumb it was that, you can't put this behind you. I mean, maybe they don't even know why they hate each other anymore. And I also said earlier that I just love the characters in this play. Obviously, Romeo and Juliet are, the stars of the show. They are great. I really like their character development. And I think that Romeo especially, you can really do a lot of different ways in a performance. You can make him really sullen and brooding, kind of like I feel like the Leonardo DiCaprio version was. Um, he just at the very beginning was just like real. You saw him sitting at the beach and he's got his cigarette in his hand and he's just like, oh, Rosaline, she hates me now. My life is over. Yeah. And granted, I do love that version because anybody in my generation, we did love us some Leo. But then there's also versions, which there is a version that somebody told me about in my ShakeTube announcement video that is from 2013 that I didn't even know about. So I'm going to probably try to watch that this month. I haven't gotten a chance yet, but I'm definitely going to watch that this month. And anyway, but you could also do him more whiny, or you could portray him as just like even like you're never gonna give him a happy-go-lucky vibe because that's not him. That's more Mercutio. He is very lively, and that's another character I love. He's very lively and kind of insane, and loves life, loves partying. He's probably a drunk, and but he's like fiercely loyal to his friend, and I love him. His Queen Mab speech is like so crazy, and I love it. And it just, oh, my friend that did the Queen Mab speech, it was just like, whoa, dude, like simmer down. And yeah, it was just, he's so great. I love him so much. And then Friar Lawrence, he is like the catalyst that like makes all this stuff happen. And all he really wants, I think, is for the feud to end. And he honestly thinks that he's doing a good thing by marrying Romeo and Juliet and then trying to help them out by giving Juliet the sleeping potion. And he thinks he's doing something right. He just wants the feud to end. But then things happen and he is like powerless to stop it. And it's kind of weird because in the end, he does get the feud to stop. But I don't think that's the way he meant for it to stop. And just the whole character of Friar Lawrence, like, man, you really have to get a talented actor to give all the nuances to Friar Lawrence, because we kind of played him in our version like kind of a hippie and kind of like a new agey priest type of a thing. And so kind of like into like the drugs and the plants. And that's kind of how the Leonardo DiCaprio version, which I cannot remember who directed that, Baz Luhrmann. That's kind of how that character was portrayed, is kind of like more of a hippie. And I really like that way because, there is poison involved. So yeah, there's so much to say about all of these characters and so many ways that you can play them. You could play Friar Lawrence as kind of like a pushover, that he's just doing what Romeo and Juliet want him to do and doesn't really have much backbone. You could play him like that. But I do kind of like the way he's portrayed as you can just, he just wants everything to be okay, but he maybe doesn't have enough backbone to just go to Capulet because he is such an evil jerkface, and say to him like, look, your kids want to get married and I think that would be a great idea. Like ultimately I think that maybe is what he should have done, but it's history. Oh, and then I didn't even talk about the nurse. Oh, she's such a great character. I love her so much. I kind of wanted to be her when I auditioned, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, because she gets a lot of stage time and it was crazy hot. and so I'm kind of glad that I could spend a lot of it indoors with a fan running on my face. So, and actually our director, she ended up having to play the nurse, and she did a fabulous job. And she the nurse is just the nurse is the comic relief, really, or at least partly. But she is just a dynamic character. She's kind of like Juliet's surrogate mother, obviously, because she's a nurse and because Lady Capulet is so kind of distant and just vengeful and kind of like a socialite type of a person. So the nurse is kind of Juliet's confidant, and she holds her own. Man, she is a ballsy lady. I can't think of another word, but she tells it like it is. And yeah, she's a really great character to have in Juliet's life, because I feel like she was kind of the one who she really wanted Juliet and Romeo to get together, and she was in her kind of confidence with that. But she also was like, well, maybe you should marry Paris. Maybe you should, because, Romeo, he is like going to be bad news for you and your whole family. And that's just going to cause a whole lot of stuff. And I don't want to see you get in trouble and, get in trouble with your father just for this boy that you just met a few days ago, which, sound advice. But she also was like, you know what? If you really think you're in love with this guy, I am going to support you. And I just love her. So, oh goodness, I just looked at my timer on this, and I have been talking for over 30 minutes at this point. And there's so much more we could talk about with Romeo and Juliet, but I'm going to stop there. Tell me in the comments, what has been your experience with Romeo and Juliet? If this was your first reading, what did you think? If it was your second, third, fourth, 10th experience with Romeo and Juliet, what have you pulled out in each of your readings that maybe you haven't seen before? Have you ever seen Romeo and Juliet performed live? Are there other adaptations that I need to watch other than probably the one that we all watched in high school? I think it was Franco Zeffirelli, I think. The Baz Luhrmann, and this one from 2013 that I didn't know existed. Are there any others that I should look into? Also, this play has been, adapted to modern movies and things probably a million times. West Side Story. If you haven't seen West Side Story, you need to. Where have you been? See some West Side Story. Sing the songs. It's great. There's dancing gang members. Who doesn't love that? So anyway, tell me, what have you seen from Romeo and Juliet? What is your experience? What are your thoughts? Who is your favorite character in Romeo and Juliet? Also, have you been in Romeo and Juliet? If you're an actor or an actress, what part did you play? Okay, that's it. I'm going to go. And with that, my friends, good night, good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I should say good night till it be morrow. Bye, friends.